Hi, I'm Jim Doti.
And I'm Christina Dodge.
Of great interest to all of us is how we as Americans can reduce our dependence on foreign oil. Our guest today is Yossie Hollander, and he has some particularly compelling solutions to this problem. He's the co-founder of the Fuel Freedom Foundation, an extraordinary supporter of the Rogers Center for Holocaust Education right here at Chapman University. Welcome to the show, Yossie.
Welcome, Yossie.
Thank you for having me.
I know we're going to be talking about oil, but the Yossie Hollander story really, at least in the business sense, starts with software and technology. So how did you get started in business?
Well, I was a kid in 1969, and IBM did a worldwide test to see if kids can program, which today sounds ridiculous, but at the time was actually a little bit interesting. And I was part of that test, so that's how I got to computers. And I built a software company in Israel, took it public in the NASDAQ in '92.
What was the innovative idea in your company that helped it to succeed?
Well, we built, as usual, with a better mousetrap, but it's a little bit
what
more
was,
than a mousetrap.
What was the better
mousetrap?
It was
an operation automation, it's called, that was the terminology. Basically, it's a software that helps people run their data center more efficiently. So you've got a bank, and you've got thousands of things to do and report to distribute, and you've got to make sure that nothing crashes, and when it crashes, you want to fix it as fast as possible. So we were kind of the management system behind it that people operated.
Yeah.
So
You never see us, but it worked great.
It works very well.
So how did you go from software to an interest in energy then?
In '99, I sold one of my companies, and my wife and I made a decision that we're going to devote most of our fortune, my time, to philanthropy. And we strategized about what to do. And one of the main areas was energy. Holocaust is another area which we're involved with.
Yeah, you're very much involved with Marilyn Herron's work here at Chapman University and the Rogers Center. And I know you were one of the principal backers during the very beginning of the Holocaust Art and Writing Contest. That's a wonderful program for middle schools and high schools. So thank you for that support. So here you were successful in technology, the computer industry, software, and you're using it for philanthropy, but also this idea you have that there's a better way with respect to energy.
There is, and there is. And when I started many years ago, or more than 10 years ago, getting deeper into the issue, I was more concerned about energy security. It was right after 9/11. I was concerned about the environment from kind of the inside. But the more I got involved with it, I realized it's actually a completely different problem. It's an economic problem.
What do you mean by that?
Because most people don't look at the economic side of the effect of oil on our life. But there's a lot of indicators that suggest that we never grew when oil was higher than 4% of GDP. More than 50% of our trade deficit is oil. It's not China. So there's a lot of concepts that we have about the economy and the effect of oil on the economy that we have never measured and looked at. There's very few people doing it actually in the country, and that's one of the things one of the things we want to change. And we think that if we can get, I'll just give you an example, okay? Let's say that we spent last year $600 billion on oil. If we cut that number by half, okay, that's $1,000 per person in the United States. That's a growth engine that can get us out of our debt problem.
But Yossie, I'm a great believer in the free market. You know the University of Chicago, you know Milton Friedman, Gary Becker, and the belief in the efficacy of free market forces. And generally, okay, it's true that oil is imported, and it's imported because importing it is cheaper than any other form of energy. And until it becomes more expensive, we'll continue to do that.
That's what I thought too in the past. But as we measured it, we found out that actually there's 4 American-made forms of energy that are cheaper than oil, and some of them substantially cheaper than oil. And they're still not in the market, but not because of the market forces. But I think we learned in economics that when something cheaper can't beat something expensive, that means there's probably a monopoly or some other intervention in there. You remember probably historically, remember AT&T? Mm-hmm. So MCI had a very much better mousetrap, okay, for long distance. But they couldn't get access to the local loop until the government and Judge Green said, no, AT&T, you've got to allow everybody access to the local loop. Within 3 years, the price of a long-distance call went down from $3 a minute to 30 cents a minute, and it's almost nothing now. And we have iPhone, we have cell phones, we have iPad. All this wouldn't have happened if we still had the old AT&T. This is the same story. We want to post AT&T
I wouldn't say it's quite
more.
the same. I beg to differ.
Of course.
Because AT&T was truly a monopoly. It was our only provider. Whereas in energy, you have a number of oil companies, some of which have a lot of reserves, some that don't have many reserves, and you would think that those that don't have a whole lot of reserves would be open to looking at other forms of energy because they don't have enough to compete with BP and Shell and some of the companies that have large deposits all over the globe.
We're not suggesting that oil is the solution. There is competition in the oil market. The question is, do we have other forms of energy? But I don't like the term energy. Let's look at this, for example. What is this?
Green apple.
Why do you call it an apple and not energy?
I don't know. Why do we call it an apple? That's what my mother said. I guess she said.
But it is energy, right? You eat it for energy.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I see.
Sugar, energy, yes.
Yeah.
So why do you confuse all other sources and talk about energy? Have you ever paid an energy bill? No.
Well, we call it electric bill, utility
electric bill,
Yeah.
exactly. Because the electric bill and your transportation gasoline bill are just very different worlds. They don't connect to one another. So first of all, we have to stop asking questions about energy. We don't have an energy problem, we have an oil problem. Energy prices are not rising. Actually, natural gas prices are going down. Mm-hmm. They're the lowest they've been in God knows how long, okay? Decades. Oil prices are rising because oil is transportation, and nuclear, solar, wind, coal, and natural gas today are all electricity. And we do not use oil in electricity. So first of all, let's stop talking about energy. Okay? We have only one market right now, which is using largely oil, almost all of it, and that is transportation. So if you want to talk about it, transportation is the issue, and oil is the problem. Now, you said it's cheaper. How do you know?
Because my belief in free market forces, that if there is something that is more efficient, that can be provided to a customer at a lower price, and you get the same kind of thing, the free market will provide it.
Like MCI?
What do you mean?
MCI couldn't get into the market for years until the market was open because people prevented access.
Well, there's a lot of money behind oil. Going up against those big guns is not an easy task.
Not an easy task. If you look at the world at $100 a barrel, which is now lower than the world price, the world spends $3.2 trillion a year on oil. They don't want to change.
No.
Why should they?
Well, there's no question that there has to be a differential to help offset the fact that there's an incredible infrastructure, a distribution system for gasoline
and for natural
that you don't have for others. So the disparity in terms of the savings, I think, has to be significant enough to offset that. Not unlike when gasoline displaced whale oil and coal and other forms of energy at the early part of the century.
In a different pricing.
Of course,
today,
all the time.
So let's look at real pricing, okay? Price per relative per gallon. So the cheapest one is electricity, okay? Electric car, if you translate it to miles per gallon, there's no gallon, okay? It's 30 to 75 cents a gallon. The battery costs more, we can talk about it, but there's no problem with the distribution system. Everybody gets electricity in their house. Second one, natural gas, okay? Natural gas is just over $1, $1.50 in a gallon equivalent. Not $3, $4 a gallon. The market doesn't accept a price signal.
No,
methanol.
But it's much smaller volumes in terms of if you took natural gas and said, well, let's power all of our automobiles by it, the price would go up because all of a sudden demand would be much greater. So you can't just take current prices.
Right now, but
prices can
if
move
you look
quickly.
at the BTU comparison, okay, so the same BTU for, let's say, the same amount, okay, for $2, 13, 15, which is the current price, is like $6 a barrel. Okay, so we still can go to $6, $8, $10 for MCF, okay, of natural gas, and we'll still be very much away from the $100 a barrel of oil. That's the price difference right now. It's huge. There's another form of fuel which is was tried in California in the 80s and the 90s very successfully. China is using it very heavily right now. So it's called methanol. It's an alcohol fuel. So methanol, right now the market price I think is $1.20 or $1.15, I don't remember, something like that. On a gallon equivalent range, it's about $1.80, $1.90.
And China's using that very successfully.
They're using it already. In certain provinces, they produce it from coal. In the United States, we produce it from natural gas, and we can produce it from garbage, too. And by the way, we are the Saudi Arabia of garbage.
That's for sure.
Using putting our garbage to good use sounds fantastic to me.
Exactly.
But didn't Congress allocate in like 2005, like a huge amount of money, like $18 billion or something like that, for nuclear fuel?
They can allocate as much as they want because they wouldn't replace a single gallon of oil, because we do not use oil anymore, okay, to run our electricity. So all it will do, if we increase nuclear, it will be maybe less coal, but it will not change anything, the oil formula. If you use wind and solar, again, it will not change the oil. It will take away from coal, from natural gas, from something else that is used to do electricity. It is the common thing. Let's do nuclear. You want to know somebody's political direction in life. You don't have to ask them if a Democrat or a Republican. Ask them what's the best technology to replace oil.
So, okay, so you're saying and I'm sure you're going to say ethanol, methanol, natural gas.
Correct, and
so,
electricity.
So you're saying that these could be substitutes for, instead of gasoline, from oil?
You talked about quantities, okay? Yeah. So last year, just give you the business opportunity also, not just the quantity. Last year, the increase in the United States natural gas production, just the increase, not the total, was, I believe, 1.7 billion MCF. If we took that and sold it in the market at a price of 2 point something, okay, the price of that is about $4 billion. If we took that amount of natural gas and let's say converted it to methanol, okay, and put it in our cars, it would have replaced more than 10 billion gallons of gasoline. That's over 10% of our imports. Okay, just 1 year of increase in our natural gas. And you know how much you pay for that amount of gasoline today? $35 billion. So now you're talking about 4 billion, 35 billion for the same amount, all domestic. If we just either use it directly as compressed natural gas or other means, or through methanol, which may be better because it's more flexible.
So why doesn't it happen?
Yeah, why
doesn't
are
it happen? I mean, you have T. Boone Pickens. He's a great entrepreneur.
Correct.
He's got access to capital and certainly the knowledge base for this.
Right.
So why doesn't the free market find
Going
it?
down
You
this
bring
road.
it to the market. You go up to a gas station and you have one for gasoline. You have one for diesel, and now you have one for ethanol.
Can our cars handle it? Can we convert them? And
oh, that's the first question. You just mentioned the first one. You actually mentioned the second. But why is it not happening? We found out there's three what we call monopolies. They're not exactly monopolies in the sense that somebody controls 70% of the market, but oil controls 7% of the market as a commodity. So the first one is our car. Okay, if your car can only take gasoline, it doesn't matter that something is cheaper and you can't put it in, it doesn't matter. Okay? But we do have cars that can take a lot of fuels, like flex fuel cars. You've noticed that in the back, it says flex fuel.
So does it have to say that?
Those cars can take ethanol and gasoline, both.
Right.
There's actually no real difference. They can take methanol.
Right.
The original cars were actually built for California in the 80s and the 90s to support methanol and gasoline.
Really?
And in China, they're used for methanol.
And how many gas stations provide?
That's why the second monopoly. So first monopoly is that we don't have enough cars like that. And why shouldn't the car producer, it's the same cost. It's really the same cost to produce them because it's one line. In Brazil, by the way, they produced 90% of the cars now are flex fuel. And over there, the driver decides what fuel to put in. You know how? He goes to the gasoline station, and it says alcohol, which is ethanol. Those of you who don't know, ethanol is what we enjoy drinking in wine and everything like that.
Oh.
Vodka, that's ethanol.
That's ethanol.
Okay? But over there, they can change it between 100% gasoline and 100% ethanol and all the way in between. There's a small application on their cell phone, which they insert the market price, the price of each, and it tells them what's the percentage that is best for their car. And that's how the market decision is made. The customer makes it, not the government.
But okay, let's go back to China, because China doesn't have quite the infrastructure investment we have. They have 1.3 billion people. The incredible increase in demand for energy there over the next 20, 30 years is just incredible, mind-boggling, especially when one considers limited fossil fuels. How are we possibly going to deal with that increase in demand? Okay, now you have central control in China. They can decide, well, we're very rational. They can hear your arguments about how other forms of energy are more efficient. Why can't they do this? They're building car plants now. They can build, in the future, they're going to be incredible increase in stations of energy distribution systems. Why instead of gasoline, they don't do it?
How do they distribute energy? There's no energy.
I didn't say gasoline.
What they did?
Energy distribution.
Okay, first of all, they're doing it. But your assumption of central control and non-influence by oil interests is not entirely correct. You look at it, it's provincial. Okay, so the coal provinces, for example, are the ones that are using ethanol the most, and the ones that have been doing tests on them for more than 10 years. And the percentage of use there is way higher than the rest of China. Because for them to import oil from the coast to the provinces is it's much cheaper for them to convert the coal locally to methanol.
And that's not an environmental problem?
It is an environmental problem, but they're building a coal plant a week. That's also environmental.
Yeah.
A power plant. They have environmental problems all over. But methanol itself is cleaner than gasoline by factor.
Even when you consider
not from coal.
Even when you consider the coal, if it comes from coal.
From coal, probably not.
Yeah.
The question you have to ask is how clean is the Chinese oil, because it's also in a different standard. But I don't know if you've seen yesterday, there was just an announcement that the Chinese oil company now surpassed Exxon as the largest oil producer in the private oil producer. Aramco, the national Aramco, our companies are larger, as the private largest company in the world on oil. And they also have influence and they don't want it to go.
So give us your plan. Let's say you were Secretary of
Maybe
Energy.
We'll explain the money. By the way, the Department of Energy was founded in the 70s to get us off oil.
Yeah.
They were very successful.
Yeah.
So the question is, what is the second monopoly? You hinted to it, and that's distribution. Because we already have 8.5 million cars in the country that are flex fuel, and yet only 2,500 stations in the entire country. Most of them in Iowa and other areas like that. Why? Because if you're a distributor and a refiner, you don't want anything that bypasses the refinery. A refinery is a very large business, high capex, and low revenue, low margin. If they lost 10% of their volume, 10, 20% of their volume to something else, I don't care what, they may go out of business.
Wow.
They are not in the business of going out of business, they're blocking it.
Those would be for the stations that are, what would prevent new stations from being developed? I mean, just look at what's happened to Kodak with digital film. I mean, huge industries have been displaced because of innovation.
Okay, so now let's look at the corner of Chapman and 55. Is there a place to put another station there? Can you license one there?
No, but if I'm an entrepreneur, I can go to an existing one and say, you know, I'm going to buy you out because I'm going to get rid of this stuff and put in a form of energy that's going to have more demand.
Yes, it's difficult because there are 250,000 stations around the country, and it happened in certain places, but that's the same thing they said to MCI, build a local loop. No, it's not economic to replace 250,000 stations around the country. It's more economic to put another pump in each one of them. And it's not that much of a money. You talk about infrastructure, let's say 200,000, let's say it cost $100,000 to put a pump. It costs less, but let's say it cost 100,000. 250,000 stations, it's just 25 billion to put it in all one pump for alternative fuel in all gasoline stations across the nation. Over a 5-10 years period, that's nothing in budgets and stuff.
So how do you subvert market forces?
Because they don't want to.
But what do you...
because they own the distribution system. They don't let you in.
So what do you do about it?
And how does
You've got to open it. Suppose, for example, the people at Chapman really wanted to get $2 gasoline, $2 a gallon oil. And they went to their...
That'd be fantastic.
Chapman needs to open
right
up a
now
station.
it almost has hit $5. So
Okay, exactly.
Yeah.
And they went to their local city council and they say, let's issue a local ordinance that every gasoline station in...
government control.
No, it's not government. It's local.
Yeah.
It's the people. Sorry, the people control. It's local. It's not from the federal government. It's the people of the city of Orange. Do they have the right to ask another station to be in the gasoline station?
Yes.
They should have the right to ask for that.
So, Yossi,
can they have the right to vote for it?
Why does any government? Why couldn't the free market do it?
Because it's blocked by the people who don't want it with the distribution system and the refiners. They control the distribution system. When you see Chevron out there, it doesn't belong to Chevron. They sold it long ago. Chevron, Shell, those are not their station. They just got the logo on the top. It's Tesoro, it's Valero. Who was against Proposition 23? Tesoro, Valero. The last monopoly is our government.
Well, that I'll agree with you.
Okay. And they prevent
That truly
competition.
is a monopoly.
And they prevent competition. I'll give you an example. Converting your car to natural gas.
Yes.
Okay, it costs in Europe about $2,000. It costs between $6,000 and $16,000 in the United States for the same car. Because of regulations.
It's prohibitive, yeah.
Yes, but at the same time, the government is spending billions and billions of dollars on alternative forms of energy, subsidizing all kinds.
Well, not all kinds.
Ethanol.
They're not subsidizing ethanol at all.
They're not paying farmers for...
Not anymore.
They're subsidizing ethanol to a significant amount.
No, they used to. First of all, they used to until last year, and that money went to the oil companies, not to the farmers. The farmers don't get any subsidy for ethanol today.
Why is all the votes for ethanol production, all of it is coming from the Midwest states, are the most significant backers of ethanol
because they grow corn.
Subsidies?
Because they grow corn.
Because they grow corn.
But they don't have subsidies anymore.
Just recently, because they found out they weren't working and they were too expensive.
But if
they gave up on it.
Well, I'm not so sure about it because the subsidies never went to them. The subsidies went to the oil companies. The distributors, the refiner we were talking about, remember the problem? They said when we wanted to say you have to put 10% ethanol in, which was a political pressure from the growers, they said, well, you have to compensate us. Give us 45 cents a gallon. Who got the 45 cents a gallon? Tesoro, Valero, the distributors, not the farmers.
Okay, so with the
wait a second.
So with the
question is, what's the cost of ethanol really in the free market?
Yeah.
And so the real cost of ethanol is that we export ethanol in the free world market. Do you know who do we export ethanol to?
China?
No. Well, maybe China too, but to Brazil, United Arab Emirates, and to Canada, people we import oil from. And what is the cost? What is the price, the market price, the worldwide market price of ethanol? $2.10.
And
what is the price?
And how much is that? That's for the current quantity. Current quantity.
Right.
Increase the quantity 10%. That's the marginal price. I'm just saying that volume changes will increase the price significantly.
It goes up every year by 10%. Our ethanol production and corn production, by the way, in the United States doubled in the last decade. Because you know why? The yields of corn doubled in the last decade. And why did they double? Because there was money.
So why did the government, why did the government, after all these billions spent on it, how come all of a sudden they stopped subsidizing it?
Oh, that was the whole political issues in Congress with cutting subsidies. They actually didn't renew it. Okay, it's not that they stopped.
Like
they didn't renew it,
like
so
taxes,
it's like, you know, when there's a lot of things that are going to expire in the end of 2013. If the government is not going to renew them, then we're going to have higher taxes, for example.
Given the monopolization of these various markets and the current situation, what are you proposing and what do you hope your foundation will be able to do?
We've got to open the market. We believe that we should not be deciding who is a winner. We should not be deciding whether it's natural gas or ethanol. Even if it's more expensive, they'll figure out a way to do it cheaper, okay? Or not, and go out of business. We should not decide if it's methanol or oil. We should open the market to competition. And unfortunately right now, because of the monopoly, we have to force it open because we don't have time. Okay? So first of all, get the government regulation out of the ways that will allow competition. I only gave you
love
just
that.
one.
Yes.
Okay?
That I love.
Yes.
Second, do find ways, either for incentives or other ways that will prevent the monopolistic behavior in the gasoline station. So you can have pumps in every gasoline station. By the way, gasoline stations don't make money from oil. They make money from the food. So opening another one is very problematic in an area. Okay? It's not that simple.
Yes.
So we want to open more, and we want to make all the cars to be flex fuel. Now, the car companies promised that when they came hand in hands in 2009 to get the government support. Now that they got it, they forgot about it. Okay? So let's demand that, okay? We saved them. Let's demand what they promised. Get all the cars, be flex fuel. It doesn't cost you anything because they all are actually built the same way because they don't know when they build an engine whether it will go in a flex fuel car or not. And they're all the same material.
Yeah.
Okay?
Right.
So they can do that.
Yeah.
It doesn't cost them much, if at all. Okay? And we should have all the car flex fuel running on anything, get the government regulation so we can convert out of the way, so we can convert our car. One last thing, you want to install a gadget that will make your car 20% more efficient, you can't, it's illegal.
What's that gadget?
It's anything.
Yossi, I hate to tell you this because we need to maybe have 3 or 4 more shows on this topic.
Yes,
I'll be happy to come.
But anything we can do to resolve this problem or ameliorate it, not only because gasoline is $5 and that's going to change, in all likelihood it's going to go up because of increased global demand. So it's a pressing issue, and it's also something we didn't really get into, a security issue for this country as well. I applaud you, I applaud your foundation. We need information.
So why don't you go to www.fuelfreedom.org, and you'll find plenty of information, and very soon we're starting a grassroots campaign that you can participate and start helping move in the country.
Fantastic.
Congratulations. Thank you for what you're doing.
Yossi.
Thank you for your support of our Holocaust education program. And we're going to have you back on the show, Yossi, okay?
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Funding for this program was provided by Chapman University.